All right, guys. Today we have a guest on the podcast, Justin Harris. Super excited to have him here. A really good friend of mine and work colleague. He's been with Keystone 4 years now, I think, and been a great asset to us and wonderful guy. So, Justin, just tell us a little bit about yourself, like your family, that sort of thing, background.
So I've been married for almost 10 years, be 10 years in September. Got 2 kids, a 6-year-old girl and a 2-month-old boy. So that's been fun. Been a fun adjustment lately. Come from a big family, 3 or 4 brothers, sister. Not really ever been in the construction industry. Came from a background in distribution. So last 4 years have been a pretty big learning curve for me, but these guys have taught me a lot. And, just a lot of learning on the job, and it's been fun. It's been really fun learning a completely new industry, so it's been great.
So you mentioned that you're not from the construction industry. Tell me a little bit about the transition from distribution into construction, things that jumped out at you that were extremely different, you weren't used to, adjustments you had to make in the construction industry.
So I'd say the biggest change of pace for going from distribution to construction it's a different level of controlled chaos. So in distribution, there's a lot of logistics involved. Obviously, you're shipping stuff. That's what distribution is. But coming back to construction, it is this perfect mess. Like, everything is messy. No 2 jobs, even if it's the same house or building, no 2 jobs are ever the same. So having to kind of adjust to my OCD of like, hey, we're gonna plan and it's gonna work. It just don't work like that in construction, from what I've learned. It's just this big ball of controlled chaos, and you plan for what you can, but acts of God, rain, all this stuff never really came into effect. It didn't hurt you in distribution, and here you got to look outside and see if you can even work today. So your plans, you can plan as much as you want, but it just don't always matter in construction. So that was like, not being able to control as much is probably the biggest transition difference.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. It's kind of all I've known, so I'm used to it. But there's days I would like to be in a more controlled environment. Obviously, it would be very nice if we could control the weather, unforeseen permit issues like the change code, all that just makes it a big glob of chaos some days.
Yeah, I mean it's so, it can be so frustrating, but it's also beautiful too. It's good to know that you're not in control, and so we just do the best we can and have faith that it's going to work out. And when it does, it's great. And when it don't, we just stay positive and keep a good perspective and just roll with the punches. Right,
and then seeing a project through, actually getting it done, and it's beautiful, very rewarding, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like some of the houses we built, I mean, this is always the one that comes to mind. That was like our first really, really big, fancy per se barndo. And seeing it done, how happy they were to be in their house, how nice they are to us. They're thankful for us. Like it's a different type of, I don't know what kind of satisfaction you call that, but it's really cool to see them all the way through.
Yeah.
To be a part of it.
So, having done this now for 4 years, what is it that you enjoy? We talked about the chaos and the difference, but what is like a couple of things that you really enjoy about being in the barndominium world, this space, doing this every day?
I would say I like being in a niche category. I like being able to separate us a little bit. Barndominiums have become popular, but they were not popular even 10, 15 years ago. So it's been really cool to not just learn about construction, but kind of learn about a niche type of construction a little bit and how versatile they are. Like that part's been really fun, because almost every customer, you're being able to teach them about, like, hey, this is what's cool about barndominiums. Here's something else you can do. And then even friends too, because they're so versatile. You can live in them, you can store tractors in them. So there's so many uses. So your target market is everyone. So it feels cool to because it's such a niche environment, you can teach everyone something about it, and then you can also learn something about it every day. So that's been really cool, like as far as like the barndominium experience goes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I forgot the other part of your question.
Just what it is you enjoy about the industry, but you kind of covered all that. Okay. Just in general, like I just want to keep talking about this as we go on shooting every week. What is a barndominium to you? Like define a barndominium, because it's a very loose definition that gets thrown around a lot. What do you think of when you think of a barndominium? What does that mean?
So I think of it in two ways. When I hear someone in the public say barndominium or customer, what I think of is a house with metal roof and metal siding. I think that's what they think barndominium is. And I guess technically it is. I don't really know what the actual definition would be. But when I think of barndominium, I think of post frame with a floating floor inside, no load bearing walls. Like that's what I think of, a traditional post frame, post in the ground, cookie footers, floating slab, no load bearing walls on the inside, just like a stand. That's what I think of when I think of barndominium.
So that's what you're talking about, the barndominium. Like we're talking about the definitions of it. That's interesting, because originally my understanding of the way they came about was people had these shops on their farm, or shop on a piece of property, and they hadn't built a house yet, and they got the idea to go in, finish it out, and live in it. And that's kind of how it conceptually came about. Mm-hmm. And now people call foundation homes with subfloors, stick frame walls, and completely conventional framing methods with metal siding barndominiums, which is fine. But I'm with you. I think more like, okay, it's a post frame building converted mm-hmm. into a house, and a lot of the benefits of it, like the thermal break with the wall mm-hmm. cavity being thicker, post in the ground gives you more rigidity in the frame and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think of a completely different type of construction. Like to me, there's three. There's crawl space, there's slab, and then there's post frame. And when I think of barndominium, I think of post frame. Yeah.
And which you can build a slab home and make it a barndominium. And sometimes it's smart to do that. Mm-hmm. Because you got rock, or you got, depending on what you're dealing with, you can't put posts in the ground. But generally speaking, when you call Keystone and you ask for a barndominium, we're going to steer you towards a post frame building.
Absolutely. I mean, even in the scenarios where it may be better to do one or the other, like that's our specialty. That's our niche. We like post frame construction. You're going to be the happiest, and we're going to be the happiest for it. So that's just what we want to do.
Yeah. Another question may overlap with some of the stuff we already talked about, but explain to me and to the audience what it is that Keystone specializes in, what makes us different, and the product we offer.
So what we specialize in is post frame shells. And that could mean a shell for you to put hay in or store your tractors in with no end walls or side walls or metal, just an open shed. Or it can mean a barndominium that you plan on living in. But what we specialize in is building the frame, which includes posts in the ground. We do the dirt work too, but that our specialty is posts in the ground, metal side, metal roofing. We install all your windows and doors, and then we'll pour you a good concrete floor. That's our specialty. If we can do that all day, every day, we'll both be happy at the end of the project. What was the other part of the question?
We being Keystone and the customer, right? You said we'll both be happy.
Yeah, us Keystone, and the customer, yeah.
What were you asking?
I don't remember your question. I answered the first part.
What does Keystone offer, and what makes us different?
So what makes us different in the post frame space is I don't want to say easy entry, but there are a lot of companies that provide packages because it is a non-traditional way of building, and there's not a lot of codes around it. So easy entry is not the right word, but it's a word that comes to mind when I think of pole barns. So it is a more there's a lot of people who sell packages, and you can just build them very cheaply. And what we've kind of done is we've kind of taken a twist on that old pole barn, cheap built buildings, and we built a premium pole barn. So we're different than a lot of companies, and we offer a premium product, and we want to be more geared towards bigger commercial buildings, bigger houses, and we'll build anything post frame, but that's kind of our specialty. You know, the bigger it gets, usually the more cost efficient that it is to build bigger. But we want to build shells, and we're different because we want to build them premium. We want to be there from start to finish. We want to do the dirt work for you. We want to pull the permit. We want to be there until our part is done, which is basically the shell. So, and what's so good about that is that someone who has some background in construction, turnkey houses right now are going outrageous. Like there's probably $250 a square foot right now in our area, but some areas up north I've seen $300, $400 a square foot. I mean, we typically range in the 50 to 75 to get you a shell. And if you have any construction knowledge, like this is the best place for you to do. We'll get you in and dried in per se, and then you can use a lot of cost savings on finishing it out yourself. And they're very easy to finish out. And it's so doable because we get you in the dry so quick. We can get you dried in 2 or 3 weeks compared to drying in a house is going to take, or a traditional house is going to take 90 to 120 days. So it's a really, like if you're someone who wants to do the work, the finish out work on the inside, you have some experience, you want to do some of the work yourself, we're a really good fit for that customer.
Right. And a lot of people ask us for turnkey. Explain, right along with what you're saying, explain why we don't do turnkey. I think the best way to explain it is that's not what we do. And I know that's not really an answer, but it's the same way with if you wanted your someone who's built traditional construction their whole life. You want them to build you a really nice house, but then you want a pole barn to go along with it. Like that pole barn is not their niche. It's not their specialty. They're going to build that house for you a lot better than they're going to build that pole barn for you. Our niche is pole barn. We're going to build you a barndominium or a pole barn better than we can build you a traditional I mean, we could probably figure it out and get it done, but you won't be happy, and neither will we. We'll both end up frustrated. And that's kind of how I think of turnkey. Like it's just not what we don't have experience in it. It's not what we've done. And we've dabbled in it a little bit, but I think at the end of the day, there are more qualified people, and that's their niche, and that's just not our niche. It's not what we're experiencing. It's not what we're good at. So we could probably do it, but we probably wouldn't be happy, and nobody wants that. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I think, too, a big draw for people to build a barndominium is cost saving. You know, a lot of times it's people that want they have a certain house size in mind, but a certain budget in mind, and it's a way to build a house cheaper if you act as your own GC. So the people that do want a GC typically aren't even happy with the prices they're getting back from a GC because their expectations are, I'm going to build this cheaper than a conventional home. And if you get a GC involved, not always, but typically you're paying around 20% for a management fee. And saving that plus doing some of the work yourself is where a lot of people see the big upside in building it and saving a lot of money.
Yeah, the cost plus contract has really taken off here. So, I mean, really COVID kind of flipped that on its head. Materials were so all over the place. All contractors could do would give you a cost plus. So whatever you think you can build it for, you just add 20%, and that's what a contractor is going to charge you. So you can save that 20%, and then if you're able to do some of the work on top of that, savings is endless. So you could build one for probably $150, $200 a square foot if you did it right. And that's where we come in. You know, we get you. The hard part about really any conventional framing is getting it in the dry. Like there's so much, all of our crews have skid loaders. We have a skid loader and a dozer to do our dirt work. Like that whole process of getting you in the dry, it takes so many things that people don't think about, like machinery, experience. Like if you don't have a good shell, then you don't have a good house.
Right.
And then once you get in the dry, you can really take your time. You can bring in sheetrock. I mean, that takes an impact. It does not take a lot of tools to be able to do that. And if you have some construction knowledge, you can do a lot of the work on the inside. Getting it in the dry is really where you want to spend your money. You want a good, solid, strong house, and you want somebody who's got a lot of experience doing it, building it, in my opinion.
Right.
So that's why I think we work so good with that type of customer. We can get it in the dry quick, and then you can go in, take your time, and save as much money as you want to, depending on how much work you want to do.
Yeah. You just built a house, conventional house, kind of. What was your experience from being a customer with a custom home? What were some takeaways for that? Like seriously, like what like someone's thinking about building a house, what should you think about? What should you, like when you buy land, what should you think about? Permitting, septic, locating the house on the property, driveway. There's so many aspects to it that people don't necessarily know. Do you want to address any of that?
Yeah, so I did. I just bought some property and I built. I mean, one of the first things I thought about that I didn't think about that came into effect later was like, how far are you building off the road? Like, all right, you got 6 acres here. Where do you want to build it? Well, most people want to be away from the road as far as they can, just for some sort of privacy. But we were building about 225 foot off the road, and it's like every foot cost me $500 or something like that. I don't know. But you got utility to run from electric. I mean, what's it called?
Underground?
Yeah, your underground electric. What's it called, Doug? Conduit, yes. Conduit's like $100 million a foot. Your water line's expensive. Putting in a driveway is expensive. And this has nothing to do with your house. This is just the raw land development. So, like, every single thing comes into play when you're building on raw land like that, like completely undeveloped. If you buy a lot in a neighborhood, you probably are going to have it platted, and you'll have electric and water and internet. I still don't have internet. I've been living there for 7 months. So just all of those things become a factor, and every single thing that you do costs you money. So
So you bring up points of like how far you're running conduit, how far your water, your driveway, all that is, and a lot of our customers are first time home building their first home, first time for them, and they're acting as their own GC. So I want to talk a lot around that specifically because it's just stuff you don't think about. Like in Tennessee, I mean, I think it takes 6 to 8 weeks to get a TDEC out to approve your septic, and that's one of the first things that has to be done. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to a customer just today, wants a 4-bed house. I'm like, do you think you can get Perk for a 4-bed? And he never thought about it. So I'm like, you need to call TDEC, get them to approve a 4-bed system before we go, launch into the whole process of getting you drawings and getting everything going. And they might shut it down for you, might only Perk for a 2-bedroom.
Right. And it is, it's crazy, but it really depends on where you live. Like that's my advice is, in the past, building in codes is pretty, they're pretty nice. Like if you walk in there and say, hey, I'm looking to build, I don't know what I'm doing. Please tell me what I need to do. They will tell you kind of what direction to run in. Especially with homeowners. I mean, no offense to building in codes, but traditionally they're nicer to homeowners than they are to contractors.
Yeah.
But where I built, I don't have building codes. I had to get an electrical permit and a septic permit. And the septic department is so slow. I called the guy and he came in 2 days to perk it. So very simple. You drive an hour up the road here to Clarksville, you're going to wait 8 weeks for TDEC, and that's like one of the first things you have to do. And a lot of things too, people are calling us before they even buy land because they need pricing. And a lot of people want to loop that land purchase in with a construction loan, which is what I did too. So it's not a bad idea. But when you do that, everything is just drawn out. Once you get the land purchased, now you got to, before you can even purchase land, you have to get it appraised. So then you go through this whole appraisal process, and then it gets appraised. It might take 8 weeks, and then you got to get it perked. And there's 4 months out of your time, and you haven't even started doing anything yet. So there's just a strenuous amount of things that you have to do. But most codes office, if you go down there and talk to them, then they will let you know kind of what inspections they're going to require, and then do your research. Like and people call us all the time, like, what do we need here? And we build enough in 5 or 6 counties that we pretty much know the codes and kind of where to start. But that is the 2 big ones, is waiting on kind of getting your land appraised and getting that whole process done, and then getting it perked. That's a big one.
Yeah.
That's about the only 2 things that'll keep you from getting started on a project. Like all the water lines, driveways, electric conduit ran from the road, like all that stuff can kind of be figured out as the house is being built. But if you don't have anything perked, you can't even start building.
Yeah.
So that's the big barrier to cross.
And they base it off bedrooms, not bathrooms, which seems backwards, but it's occupancy. How many people you think max occupancy would be, and that's how they base the system. So just want to point that out real quick.
Yeah, utilize the office space, bonus rooms. Like a way to get around that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, call your bedroom an office.
Yeah.
When you were talking about the delays to getting started in construction, so people will come to us and they're like, we want to be in by Christmas, or they might have a certain date in mind. And, of course, permitting holds it up, perking, all that sort of thing. But once all that's done, what's a realistic timeline for a homeowner that wants to act as their own general contractor from the time they pull the trigger to the time they're moving in, if they're working with us? What do you think's average?
I would say if it's your first time ever doing it and you're new to the area, I would say if you get in within 9 months to a year, you're doing really good. And if you've been in the area before, maybe you've built a house and you had it contracted and you're like, all right, I know how to do this now. I feel comfortable, and you are good at it. I think you could get in 6 to 9 months. So our portion itself, Keystones, we can pretty much dry any house in, no matter how small or big, maximum of 10 days. So once we break ground, in 10 days, you're going to be dried in and ready for plumbing so that we can pour the slab. So our part is really quick. I think where you're going to have the biggest problem is home builders are really, really big in Clarksville right now, and Clarksville is being developed like Nashville. Like there are houses going up by the dozens. So where you're really going to have a problem is all of the good subs, like the people who are good at drywall, good at painting, good at cabinets, good at pouring concrete. Those guys are busy, and they're busy with people who give them work every day.
Yeah.
And it's hard to pull a good guy off of someone who gives him work year-round for them to do one job for a random homeowner who is probably less likely to pay them than the general contractor is. You know what I'm saying? Like, why not work for the guy who's going to give you work and you know he's going to pay you? Why take a chance on a homeowner? I would say that's the biggest setback you're going to have is you're going to be ready to pour something, or you're going to be ready for paint, and it's going to take you 2 weeks to get a guy there who's any good because he's busy with all the other kind of commercial or development of people who do it professionally around the city.
Yeah. And that's in highly developed areas.
Right.
But if you're in more of a rural setting or somewhere it's not like a boom town, like that's the first thing that comes to our mind because we work a lot in Clarksville. But there's a lot of areas outside of that where it's not near as much headache to get a electrician to show up and give you a bid and show up when he says and do his job. Yeah,
and it's still kind of the same way there is even if you're on top of it, trying to coordinate with as many different subs as you're going to need if you're going to general contract it yourself, just knowing what to have there, what comes first. I mean, there are things online that you can read. If you do your research, you can get pretty good at it. And I mean, I was dried in. I mean, I was able to live in about 5.5, 6 months. So my general contractor did really good. But I'd say that's about best case scenario, like 5 to 6 months, and you're killing it. But again, it took me almost 60 days to get in the dry. So it really depends, man. Like if you do your research and you're very, very organized and you've got everybody, this is what we're doing. And I'll tell you the big thing too that causes delays is change orders. Like do your research on what you want beforehand. The more things you change, A, it's going to be more expensive, and B, it's going to take a lot more time to get done because now you got to order something else, wait for it, and this guy's waiting on that guy. Like really, really get a good plan. It's a big, big decision to build a house. I mean, especially in today's age, like $300,000 to $500,000 what you're going to spend on a house if you're building new construction.
Yeah.
And it's just if you don't, I mean, it's a big purchase. So you really should do your research, figure out exactly what you want, and then hold to it. Yeah, absolutely. Changing things mid stride is a big has a ripple effect too. So like you have everything planned and then you change one thing and then it affects 3 other things too that you didn't think of. Right. It just pushes everybody on down the line.
Yeah.